Eddie Guerrero's name brings smiles, cheers, and memories of some of the greatest moments in wrestling. But behind those moments was a life full of struggles, sacrifices, and battles most of us could never imagine. November 13th, 2005, the Marriott Hotel in Minneapolis. Eddie Guerrero's nephew, Chavo, knocks on the door. No answer. Hotel security finally opens it. They find one of wrestling's biggest stars, unresponsive on the floor. At 38 years old, Eddie Guerrero passes away. But what exactly happened?
His body was discovered around 7:30 this morning. The cause of death is unknown at this time, but police say there were no signs of foul play.
Here's what you need to know about professional wrestling in the late 90s and early 2000s. This industry runs on one principle: content never stops.
Content never sleeps.
What exactly does that mean? Picture this schedule: Monday Night Raw, Tuesday, plane to the next city, Wednesday, house show, Thursday, another house show, Friday, SmackDown taping. On the weekend, more live events. Then it starts all over again. 300 days a year, sometimes 320. You have a swollen knee? Too bad. You gotta work through it. Separated shoulder? Tape it. Concussion? Aspirin. Because if you're not there, someone else will be. Eddie Guerrero lived this for over 20 years. Mexico, Japan, ECW, WCW, and the WWE. Different companies, same grind. WWE performers were classified as independent contractors. No guaranteed healthcare, no workers' compensation, no mandatory time off. You work hurt or you don't get paid. The business model was simple: maximize output, minimize downtime. WWE performers back then went through a lot. So how did they even survive without breaking down? Eduardo "Gory" Guerrero Llanes, born October 9th, 1967 in El Paso, Texas. Wrestling wasn't just his job, it was his literal birthright. His father, Gory Guerrero, was a Mexican wrestling legend.
Take my dad, he's a legend, in Mexico. Not only Mexico, he's very well respected.
His brothers wrestled. His nephews would become wrestlers. The Guerrero name meant legacy, excellence, and expectations you couldn't escape.
It's been my dream in my life. Everybody had jungle gyms in the backyard. I had a wrestling ring.
Eddie started training at 14. By his 20s, he was perfecting his craft in Mexico and Japan, a style mixing technical wizardry with high-flying innovation. He wasn't the biggest guy in the ring, but he made you believe every move. But with that legacy came crushing pressure. Pressure to live up to the Guerrero name. Pressure to succeed where Latino wrestlers rarely got top spots. Pressure to prove, night after night, that he belonged. And in wrestling, belonging at the top level meant looking the part. You couldn't be small, not if you wanted to stand next to the giants. So Eddie transformed. 5 feet 8 inches, 220 pounds of almost pure muscle. The body the industry demanded, but that transformation would come at a cost. By his 30s, Eddie had worked in 5 countries, a dozen promotions, accumulating injuries, and where most athletes never experience in their entire careers. And that's when the real damage began. New Year's Day, 1999. Eddie is in his car after he and Vicky, his wife, had gotten into an argument, driving 130 miles per hour, but all of a sudden, these thoughts come to him. I'll show you. I'll hurt myself. Is this it? Is this what I worked my whole life for? If I make it home, then I make it home. If I don't, that's okay too. Then everything goes flat.
What happened on New Year's Eve? It was, I believe, 1998 when he fell asleep at the wheel.
That's when my drug problems were starting to get out of hand.
Just before Eddie drove off, he took Renutrient, also known as GHB. It's an illegal drug that is sometimes used as a party drug. It produces feelings of euphoria, relaxation and sociability, and an increased sex drive. GHB acts as a nervous system depressant and poses a risk for dependence. Even a small increase in dose can cause serious effects or death. In his book, he said 1 or 2 capfuls of this would put him to sleep. But that night, he took 5. Eddie Guerrero's car crashes. The impact nearly kills him.
They said I was going 130 miles when I flipped. They thought I was dead until a person, a lady that was there, they saw me moving. Then they realized I was alive.
His car was flattened like someone stepping on a Coke can. But Eddie fortunately wouldn't be in the car. Actually, he would end up flying through the T-top of his car. Next thing you know, he would end up at the hospital. When Vicky arrived at the hospital, the doctor pulled her aside. "We suggest you call your family," he told her. "We don't believe he's going to make it through the next 2 nights." Eddie had a badly lacerated liver, a reconstructed ankle, 3 fractured vertebrae, and more. The doctors even assumed that he wouldn't make it, but if he did, he would never step in the ring again. But he survived, and that's when a different kind of nightmare began. The doctors prescribed painkillers, Vicodin, OxyContin, whatever would help him manage the pain and get back to work. 5 weeks later, Eddie was back in the ring. His body hadn't fully healed, but the schedule didn't wait for anyone. And the pills? They never stopped. "I wasn't getting high," Eddie would later say. "I was using them to get through life." When you can't stop working, but your body is screaming to stop, pain management becomes survival. What started as legitimate treatment after the car accident became something else entirely. Eddie was open about his struggles.
And I've had problems with drugs and alcohol. And what's important in my life now is God and my recovery.
Painkillers for injuries, alcohol for stress, then eventually harder substances when those stopped working. This wasn't unique to Eddie. It was an epidemic across the entire industry. In the late 90s and early 2000s, professional wrestlers were dying at alarming rates. Heart attacks in their 30s, overdoses in their 40s, even cases of CTE. The list grew longer every year. How did the industry respond? Well, it was minimal. WWE had vague drug testing policies starting in the late 1980s. In 1987, WWE started testing for cocaine after Jim Duggan and Iron Sheik were arrested. But then in 1991 to 1992, the WWE implemented steroid testing after Hulk Hogan got into federal trouble after admitting steroid use on Arsenio Hall. However, all of a sudden in 1996, the WWE suspended the drug testing policy completely. If you want us to cover this massive steroid scandal, scroll down and let us know in the comments. But the reason for this? The cost. No comprehensive wellness program existed, no mandatory cardiovascular testing, no one watching out for the performers. Just wrestlers left to manage their own struggles while the shows kept running. By early 2001, Eddie's condition had deteriorated severely. He had already suffered 3 drug overdoses. His friends, Benoit and Dean Malenko, saw him getting worse and staged an intervention with WWE management. A week later, Eddie showed up to a show in Minneapolis completely messed up. WWE executive Jim Ross pulled him aside and gave him an ultimatum: go to rehab or you're fired.
And I told him, as long as you don't want to change, we're not going to be able to use you.
That's when Eddie hit absolute rock bottom. In May 2001, WWE sent him to rehab for painkiller addiction. They wrote him off TV with an injury angle, said he'd been attacked by another wrestler. But that was just the story for the cameras. The reality? Eddie was spiraling. And it got worse. November 9th, 2001, Eddie was arrested for drunk driving. 3 days later, WWE released him from his contract. He had lost everything. His job, nearly his family, nearly his life. Again, and he made the decision to get clean. Eddie went to rehab, did the hard work, got sober. WWE rehired him in 2002, and within 2 years, he was WWE Champion. Fans chanted Eddie was sober. He did everything he could to change. But the schedule hadn't changed. The physical demands hadn't changed. The 300-day calendar hadn't changed. The culture celebrating pain hadn't changed. Years of steroid use, which was almost universal in 90s wrestling, had enlarged Eddie's heart. And unfortunately, that doesn't reverse when you get clean. Years of painkillers damaged his cardiovascular system. Accumulated head trauma, back injuries, and joint damage left permanent marks. Sobriety saved Eddie's life. But was it too little too late? So Eddie's at the absolute peak of his career. Fans love him. His matches are incredible. And from the outside, everything looks perfect. Behind the championship reign, everyone around him started to notice changes. Signs showed slowly and steadily. Benoit mentioned Eddie walking up arena stairs and suddenly losing his breath. Chavo recalls that Eddie would hold his chest between moves. JBL even talked about Eddie's skin having a gray tint some nights. In the same year, WWE implemented mandatory cardiovascular testing for all wrestlers over 35. Now, this is a great implementation from the WWE, and even better for Eddie, given his past. Even to the point that Eddie's results were concerning enough that WWE's doctors required him to see a cardiologist. He was prescribed blood pressure medication and told to reduce his schedule, but he didn't and he couldn't. He finally reached the top, the upper echelon of the wrestling world. He finally reached his dreams, and being WWE Champion meant being everywhere. The week before he died, Eddie worked WWE's European Tour, Manchester on November 5th, Sheffield on the 6th, Bologna, Italy on the 8th. That's 3 countries in 4 days, immediately after working a full US schedule. November 13th, 2005, 7:30 a.m. Chavo and hotel security head to Eddie's hotel room because he didn't answer his 7 a.m. wake-up call. When Chavo knocked on Eddie's hotel room door, he wasn't immediately worried. Eddie sometimes overslept, but when security opened the door, they found Eddie on the floor with a toothbrush in his hand and still gripping onto life. He'd been getting ready to meet Chavo. Just a normal Sunday morning that became wrestling's darkest day. Chavo ran over to Eddie to hold him in his arms, but suddenly Eddie was gone. The Anoka County Medical Examiner's autopsy revealed the full scope of what killed Eddie Guerrero. His heart was nearly double the normal size, enlarged from years of strain. Multiple coronary arteries showed severe atherosclerotic disease, critical blockages that had been developing for years. The left ventricle wall had thickened dramatically, a condition called ventricular hypertrophy. The toxicology report proved what everyone hoped. Eddie was completely clean. No illegal drugs, no alcohol, no steroids. After 4 years of sobriety, there were only prescribed medications at therapeutic levels in his system. The medical examiner also noted fatty metamorphosis of the liver, scarring from his past addiction. Even though Eddie had been sober since 2001, his organs still showed the damage. The official cause of death: acute heart failure due to atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Basically, what this all means is that Eddie's heart had been dying for years. The steroid use from the 90s permanently enlarged it. The painkillers after his 1999 accident damaged his cardiovascular system. 20 years of 300-day schedules prevented any recovery. By the time Eddie got sober in 2001, got clean in 2002, became champion in 2004, the countdown had unfortunately already started. Eddie left behind a widow and 3 daughters: Shawl, 14, Sherilyn, 10, Kaylee, just 3. At his funeral, Chris Benoit gave the eulogy. The wrestling world said goodbye to a man who just turned 38. Within 24 hours, WWE's tribute show drew 5.2 million viewers. Eddie's merchandise sales exploded 800%, but Vicky received nothing. No life insurance, no pension. Eddie was an independent contractor. WWE created a trust fund only after wrestlers demanded it. 3 months later, WWE launched its wellness policy. The drug testing and heart screenings Eddie's death made necessary, but too late to save him. Today, his daughter Shoal has spoken about the cost of her father's career, how his constant traveling meant she grew up barely knowing him, a man who carried his family's legendary name, who transformed his body to meet impossible standards, who survived a near-fatal crash only to become addicted to the pills meant to heal him, who lost everything, then clawed back to redemption, became WWE Champion, proved recovery was possible, made millions believe in second chances. At 38, his heart simply stopped. Eddie did everything right at the end, got sober, rebuilt his life, became the father he wanted to be. But it wasn't enough. The damage was already done. His death wasn't murder, but it was absolutely preventable. That's the heartbreaking truth of Eddie Guerrero.
Hey Chris, this is Eddie Guerrero. Hi Nancy, how you doing? We're really looking forward to your company. But anyway, the reason I'm calling is I'm trying to get a hold of Chris. And the reason is because I got to fly into Minneapolis tonight. And I don't know if Chris is flying in tonight or tomorrow morning. But I know I got to fly in tonight. So if you could get back to me as soon as you can, I'd greatly appreciate it, Chris. Okay? Thank you, brother, and God bless you, man, and I'm sorry to disturb you, okay? Take care, man. My best to your family. Bye-bye.
But Eddie's story isn't the only heartbreaking story coming from the wrestling world. Owen Hart was one of the most beloved wrestlers in history. To hear his story, click here. Thank you for watching. Leave us a comment below of what you think, and welcome to the dark side.